Alright, this video is going to talk about factoring the problems that you'll see on Study Island that you could come across. Study Island can kind of get a little more involved than what we typically do in class, but it's still the same basic concept, so it's nothing to really stress about. So here's our first problem. I have 2x to the third y plus 12x squared y plus 16xy. So just like always, I'm going to always find a GCF first. So the GCF, I know my A term is not positive 1, so this 2 is going to divide out of everything. But I might as well look for the full GCF in the whole thing to factor it all out in one step. So we always say that the GCF is the shared variable in each term. So each of these contain an x and they each contain a y. So my first step would have looked like that. Factoring the 2xy out of the parentheses, so my parentheses are going to have x squared plus 6x plus 8. And now this is just like any other problem we've done so far. Make your t-chart. The factors of 8 that will combine and give you a 6 are going to be 4 and 2. And then it's just going to break into 2xy, x plus 2, and x plus 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 plus 4 is 6. Your 2xy is still out there, so the answer to that question, let me move it over a little bit, would be C. Okay? I've gone ahead and worked out all of these because I just want to make sure that I have the work correctly, because usually I make a video and I make a mistake on it. So anyway, let's take a look at this one. This one has a decimal and a negative decimal. So when we divide out its negative decimal, because remember that A term always has to be positive 1. That's what the standard says. So I'm going to pull the negative 0.7 out. So my first step is going to be negative 0.07 factored out. When you factor it out, use the calculator. It'll switch all the signs. So this is going to become positive x squared, positive 4x, and negative 12. Make your t-chart if you have to. The factors of 12 that combine and give you 4 are 6 and 2. And just set up your two sets of parentheses, just like you've been doing. So the moral of the story with this one is your GCF is allowed to be negative. It can be a decimal. It doesn't matter. But it'll always come out and it'll always form a positive 1. Okay. Now, a couple things with a question like this. If it says factor completely, most of the time that's trying to tell you that you're going to have more than one step to it. Sometimes not, but usually it's going to be, it'll have like the GCF step and then the two sets of parentheses step. And the last type of problem I want to talk about, I call it a Goldilocks problem. And I call them that, and they're usually the ones that are raised to a fourth power. If they're raised to a fourth power, don't worry. Now, the Goldilocks, remember, she ate the porridge. It was too hot, too cold, and just right. Kind of what I go for with these. So when you start off, just split the difference. Put x squared in one and x squared in the other. This behaves just like a difference of squares. So you have a negative 9 and a positive 9, because together they would form 0 when you combine them. They multiply to give you negative 81. So the next step would be this x squared minus 9 would factor, because it's a difference of squares. You have x minus 3 and x plus 3. Negative 3 times 3 gives you negative 9. Negative 3 plus 3 gives you 0, so this part's factored. Now over here, it gets a little weird. You might look at it and say, well, x squared plus 9 would factor, but it doesn't. Because there are no factors of positive 9 that will combine and give you 0. You might be saying, well, what about 3 and 3? 3 and 3 will make 0, but one of them needs to be positive and one of them needs to be negative. So multiplying a negative and a positive is going to get you a negative. So the C condition isn't met when you switch the signs. If you make them both positive, you get positive 6. If you made them both negative, you get negative 6. If you switch the signs, you're not going to multiply and get your C term. That's what I'm saying. So when the answers look like this one's factored just right. This one's not factored enough, and this one is factored too much. And this one here is just garbage. So be on the lookout for those. Usually it's when it's raised to the fourth power. You're going to see the ones that look a little weird. So just keep on your toes with those ones.